There's no doubt that the playoff race in the Western Conference this upcoming NBA season is going to be really interesting. And there's a lot of NBA fans right now during the offseason that have talked about and ranked really high in their predictions teams that have made big moves in the offseason, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who got Rudy Gobert, teams like the Clippers and Nuggets, who are going to get really key players back and possibly propel them to being at the top of the West again, and many other teams that a lot of fans are excited about. But one team this offseason that's gone completely under the radar is the Memphis Grizzlies. Are we not going to talk about and remember how this team was the 2 seed last year in the West and has an incredible young core that's very well put together, great on both ends of the floor, and plays very good fun amount of basketball? I mean, just everyone's forgetting about this team, and I want to talk about them today because I think that they're a lock to be a top 5 team in the West this year, possibly top 3, and I think that NBA fans are making a big mistake by sleeping on them, and I think they're going to be championship contenders again this season. So in today's video, I'm going to discuss why. So pretty much over the last few years, the Grizzlies have executed what you can pretty much consider the closest thing to a perfect rebuild. I mean, it's all because of their drafting and developing, and I made a video early on a couple months ago as well about just how good of a rebuild they pulled off, and without even spending that much money, even not really getting any key free agents, really making any key trades, all of their core guys are internally developed, guys that they drafted or traded for on draft night and developed. And really where that all starts is Morant. The second overall pick in 2019 has absolutely exploded in his NBA career so far and becoming that franchise player. And I really think that every team needs kind of that franchise player, that top 10 type of guy, that MVP caliber player to lead their team if they want to win a championship. And that's been proven. I mean, there have been very few teams, I believe actually only 3 in NBA history, that have been able to win an NBA title without a past, present, or future MVP on their team. And now Ja has very quickly developed into that caliber of a player for the Grizzlies, and I think right now he's definitely in my top 15 players in the NBA after what he did last season, winning the most improved player and just developing every aspect of his game very well. And I think by the end of next season he's going to be in the top 10. The Grizzlies have also done a very good job building the core around Ja, which is the difference between them and other teams trying to execute rebuilds right now. But really it does start with Ja and how he's developed into a superstar caliber player. And when we look at some stats, I mean, the improvements from the 2021 and 22 season compared to his 2020 and 21 season are really incredible, and that's what stands out the most. But also just how he's pretty much at an elite level with most offensive categories. I mean, his interior scoring is just incredible. The way that he's able to electrically finish at the rim with some posterizing dunks sometimes. His layup package is incredible, especially when he gets out in transition. And he's one of the best in the game with those little floaters around the rim, which a lot of teams like to live with that shot. And if you have that in your bag, you're going to be one of the most unstoppable guards in the NBA. To be able to finish around the rim so efficiently, but then also kind of in the middle of that paint area, shoot those little floaters. He's really an incredible interior scorer. His jump shot obviously still needs some work, but he improved it drastically from last season as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Ja become an over-average mid-range and three-point shooter next season with the improvements as he's been having recently. His playmaking and IQ has always been at a top-tier level, and I think definitely always will be. That's just easily one of the best, if not the best, aspect of his game, and he's definitely one of the best in the league there. And then defensively, he definitely needs some work and development, but he's not really that important to the Grizzlies' defense right now. He's just kind of a perimeter player that can be put into a favorable matchup for him a lot of the time, and I would say he's still got a little bit better there as well with his perimeter defense. He's quick, but again, he doesn't really matter that much to the Grizzlies defense. They're set pretty much with their system on that end of the floor, and his offensive talent is obviously what he's there for and what this team needs. He's the leader of this team, and like I said, I think he's going to be considered top 10 in the NBA by the end of next year. When we look at his stats from last year, he averaged about 27.5 points per game, obviously getting up there with the elite in the NBA with those stats, over 5.5 rebounds per game, over 6.5 assists per game, and his efficiency was top tier. Like I said, he's a great interior scorer, shot almost 40 or over 49% from the field, which as a point guard is absolutely elite, about 34% from 3, which is an improvement of about 4% from the previous season, and an overall 57.5% true shooting, which is above league average. His offensive talent is incredible, and he's the franchise player for this team. And of course, pretty much all of the rebuilding teams and a lot of the contending teams in the West do not have that franchise player yet at the same caliber as Ja Morant. Having that one superstar franchise guy is crucial for any team that wants to contend seriously. The analytics, the past experiences of seasons, it just simply proves that, whether you want to accept it or not. But what really does in today's NBA separate the Grizzlies from other rebuilding teams, and I think will separate them from the other contending teams as well, and the reason they were able to finish second in the West last year and contend in the playoffs as well, is because their supporting cast is not only do they have a lot of talent with it, but they have a guy that can fit into every single role that you need on really both sides of the floor. So they've got a lot of talent. There's no denying that. It's the same thing with a lot of other teams. Guys like Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, Tyus Jones, and a lot of other guys off of the bench that provide some good depth for them. But what really makes his team good is how each of these guys can fit into a specific role and accept that role. And I discuss this so much in my videos because it's so important for NBA teams to have that kind of not only just chemistry, but guys just accept their roles and be able to fit into those roles. So we look at each one of these players. We take Brooks, for example. He can be kind of a secondary scorer, the main kind of perimeter defender on this team on the defensive side of the floor. We've seen him a lot of times in the playoffs go head-on-head against the other team's best guard and really provide a lot of defensive presence. It's the same thing with Jaren Jackson Jr., but he's their main rim protector. Last year, he led the league in blocks per game, so that's really his role. He's that defensive anchor for them, that interior defender, and then offensively does a great job of playing in the post, stretching the floor and shooting threes at times, and he's still a little bit raw offensively, I'd say, but again, he really fits into that role on the defensive side of the floor. Then you've got a guy like Desmond Bane, who he's really that kind of that sharpshooter. Another thing that I'd say, it's close to being considered a thing that every team needs in today's NBA, or just kind of good spacing in general. The Grizzlies definitely have that, but especially with their sharpshooter in Desmond Bane, who last year shot an astounding 43.5% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. So he fits into that role well. And then a guy off of the bench like Tyus Jones, who has a very high IQ, is a good passer, overall playmaker, and does a great job coming off of the bench and providing that for this team when they need it. He can be a good interior scorer as well, shoot that floater. He's almost like kind of a mini Ja Morant off of the bench, and just with, of course, less minutes and less talent, but does a good job of playing that role. And then a guy like Brandon Clark. I mean, I can't rave enough about Brandon Clark. I love watching him play so much because he fits into his roles so well. His rebounding ability is really incredible. We saw in the playoffs last year just how many offensive rebounds he would grab, how many possessions he would save and redo for the Grizzlies because of his amazing rebounding ability, his ability to play really well in the pick and roll, slip to the basket easily at times, and be an extremely efficient scorer that most of the time is going to put up field goal percentages of above 60%. He can be a decent three-point shooter at times, but the way he fits into his role offensively is very valuable for this team, especially in the playoffs last year where he was having 20-point games all the time, and I expect a lot more of that this season. He could potentially be in the running for most improved player this year, and he's a versatile defender as well that provides some good stuff on that end of the floor. So overall, you get the point. Not only does this Grizzlies team have a lot of young, developing individual talent, but everyone can fit into their own role. They've checked all of the boxes that they need with this team, and they've also had a full season together and developed some chemistry, and this is something that a lot of other teams don't have. For example, the Minnesota Timberwolves, while they have the Twin Towers now in Gobert and Towns, I think they're going to have, at least at the start of the season, some issues chemistry-wise, fitting those two together. And then we see with like the Denver Nuggets, for example, how they have some guys going back. Their second and third best players like Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., and they're going to be obviously dominant offensively. They have great chemistry on that end of the floor as well, but then they're lacking a little bit on the defensive side of the floor. They don't have a good defensive anchor. They don't have a good rotating team. They don't have a good overall, good enough defending team to compete at a really high level, in my opinion. And maybe I'll be proven wrong this season and they switch some stuff up there, but overall my point is that the role players on the Grizzlies and the guys surrounding Ja fit well around him. They fit well into their roles, and they can provide a lot of things on both ends of the floor and overall have great chemistry. And one more main thing that I think the Grizzlies, especially when it comes down to the playoffs, something that can separate them from other teams, is how they play really good fundamental basketball, and they do the little things very well. So not only just offensively and defensively do they just have very good flow and play good fundamental basketball, but they do a really good job of being active and energetic and getting on loose balls and just those little 50-50 plays, rebounding, all that kind of stuff. That can separate, that can decide games in the playoffs. A couple of those little plays, and you look at a guy like Brandon Clark, he provides a lot of this as well. Just good rebounding, shot blocking abilities, all that kind of stuff. But this can, like I said, it can decide playoff games. And when we look at some stats from last year, in the regular season at least, they ranked number 1 in the league in rebounds, steals, and blocks per game. All 3 of those stats, they were number 1 in the NBA. And when we look even deeper into some hustle stats, they're also number 1 in the league last year in the regular season in loose balls recovered, second in the league in deflections per game as a team, and 5th in contested shots per game. I mean, just defensively, recovering loose balls, just giving effort, going up for those rebounds, just being active defensively. I mean, this team does it better than any other team in the NBA, and that's going to separate them from teams that are just talented, for example. And some teams that stand out, like a new team like the New Orleans Pelicans, who I'm definitely very high on. I recently made a video about them too. Same thing with the Dallas Mavericks. My last video was about Christian Wood and how well he's going to fit on this team, and he could help them be an elite team. Other teams I've discussed a lot in today's video: the Timberwolves with their new looking team, the Nuggets with a lot of their core players coming back and helping them offensively. I think the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be separated from all of these teams because of my second reason, how well everyone fits in their chemistry, but also how well they do on the little things like rebounding, getting steals, just being active, diving on loose balls, all that kind of stuff. They're a very good overall defensive team. They hustle a lot, and they have a lot of energetic guys. With all of what I've said in today's video, the West is still such a difficult conference, and I have in my predictions the Grizzlies finishing 4th in the regular season in the Western Conference, because I just think there's 3 teams that, at least in the regular season, are going to be absolutely elite. Those being the Suns, who in the regular season are still a 60-win plus team. The Clippers, with both Kawhi and Paul George coming back, I think they're going to be an elite team as well. And the Warriors, of course, the defending champions. But especially once we get to the playoffs, you could see this Grizzlies team definitely pulling off an upset against one of these teams in a 7-game series and potentially going all the way. Like I discussed in today's video, they've got their superstar in Ja, they've got a great supporting cast around them, and they're a very good and active team. They do the little things well, and they're very good defensively. So that's all I've got for you guys in today's video in terms of analysis on the Grizzlies. I think this team is definitely a sleeper, and a lot of people are sleeping on them going into 2022 and 23, and I think they could do some special things this season and build off of their immense success from last year. So make sure you guys comment down below your thoughts on the Grizzlies as well, and I'll see you all next video.